Welcome to Ask the Druids again. And today I have Jocelyn Bates with me, who is a soul art guide, a yoga nidra guide, a Akashic Records guide, and also a human design coach. So she has a lot of really cool skill sets and information that she brings to people. So thanks for being on today, Jocelyn.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of the topic that you've chosen for us to talk through today?
Yeah, so I am a soul art guide and I work with people using creative expression as a conversation with the soul. And I work with the Akashic Records and work on helping people balance the nervous system. And I came to all of that through the loss of my parents, which was 7 days apart, and that huge portal of grief that I decided to jump wholeheartedly into and just create um, some major transformations for my life.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so now I like to help other people with very similar transitions in life or, grief or anywhere someone's feeling like they just need a little more purpose, meaning,
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With those 4 different, modalities that you have, how do you weave them in to work with someone? Like, how do they all kind of mash together? I know we all kind of have these different things in our toolboxes, but it's like the melding of them is really interesting sometimes.
Yeah, it really depends on who I'm working with. I work in soul sessions, so sometimes I'll use like one stage of soul art, which is intention setting, and I'll really dive deep in with somebody with that, and then we'll move towards the Akashic records to start to write that intention into their records, find out where their belief systems hold them back from that. We might like look at their human design chart and look at how they've been conditioned for that belief system and how to decondition from that. It's really very individual because I meet with people and then go from there. So
Okay. Yeah, fine
yeah,
tune it based on who's in front of you and what they need.
yeah.
Makes
Though
total
I do give everyone yoga nidra balancing the nervous system techniques because that's like the touchstone.
Yeah, it always amazes me how much the nervous system is involved in what we do. Even myself as a channel, it's like I can feel it, how it affects my body overall and the nervous system. So,
Oh, yeah. I was just the other day talking about being in the Akashic records of somebody, and I needed to like go in a cold shower afterwards. I needed to like just clear the energy. I needed to do a bunch of breathing. Where am I again? Where am I?
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, very, very interesting. So kind of based on all that information that you hold and kind of what you do, what is the topic that you want to touch on today with the Druids?
I would love to touch on the topic of creativity. I
Okay.
work so deeply in that creative field, and I believe creativity is this language of the soul.
Mhm.
And I'm so interested in hearing what the Druids have to say in the sense of how to tap into that creativity, how to make that easier.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic and one we really haven't covered because I always hear creativity is so important to us, that we need to let that expression, that right side of our brain really express out. So I love it. So,
Yeah.
okay. Any questions before we get started and I go into channel?
No, no.
The allowance in the art of the human form and of the human experience is about understanding how to exist within a realm with a higher dimensional density so that you do feel so rooted, but it also allows you the ability to have free will. But the downfall of the human existence is that you can very easily get caught up and you do one thing, then the next, then the next, then the next. And that becomes problematic as all of this is coming in for you because you find that you don't allow yourself to explore what else is out there. Or when you talk about the topic of creativity, creativity allows for the mind to expand. It allows for the soul to become more front and forward with here is one option. This is what we could do. And creativity can be looked at in many different ways. It can be looked at, and yes, as you see it as painting or as drawing or as writing or something that you would say is a creative standpoint. But it also can be looked at as that brainstorming is very creative. It can be looked at as daydreaming, is what you call it, could be creative. There are so many ways for that creative side to come out. You can do it through cooking, through gardening, through saying, I'm going to put rocks down, and what form do you put them down in if they're outside? It is about looking at something and saying, how can this be different than what it was before? So when people say they are not creative, that is not the case. For all beings hold some type of creativity. They all hold some type of creative sense that really allows for them to expand in a different way. It is just about seeing it from a different vantage point. And for those that don't see it from the different vantage point, they get very stuck in what they do, stuck in how they do things. For without the evolution of the human form, without evolution of how things work and the growth that humans experience, there has to be creativity. An inventor is creative, an entrepreneur is creative. All of these things allow for that to flow through. And when you allow that part of the soul to really step forward and think outside the box, think in different ways, to bring it to the consciousness and go, how about we try this? That is when the new experiences and the new standpoints truly come through, and they truly allow for all of that to make sense. Does that make sense to you right now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So then you say, well, how does that work with someone who is very an allowance of not wanting to be that creative? How does it work for someone that says, no, I don't enjoy those things. I want to get up. I want to go to work. I want to come home. I want to sit, maybe go for a walk, and then I want to go to bed. And they create this routine that doesn't allow for this opening or this expansiveness. And for those people, they're just very sedentarily stuck energetically. They do one thing, then the next, and they move on. One thing, then the next, then they move on. And this is really about them having this sense of how can all of this happen, but how can they do one small thing to get out of that rut? Maybe it is that they say, I'm going to think outside the box, perhaps just a little bit with how I dress. Maybe I'm not going to wear the same basic blue or black every day. I'm going to add in a pop of color of green. And that's really the first step of saying, let's try something else. Maybe, for instance, they say, I am going to think about how I'm going to redo a room in my home. And they think, well, it's fine, it's okay. But then all of a sudden they have a problem with the ceiling, and then there's water coming in. They're like, well, I need to repaint because I fixed the leak and now I need to repaint. And say, well, instead of doing what was there before, maybe I go out and I buy a different shade of white. And you'll say, well, it's white, white's white. What does it matter? But by recreating that, that is just a slight shift in what could be. So something that has been shut down in so many humans through the societal understanding is that creativity is a negative thing. There's the belief structure that if you are creative, you will never be able to be successful, to be abundant, to be prosperous. And it is far and few between. And that is because the more creative people are, the more the creativity shines, the more expansive each person can become. The more expansive society and the human race will become because new ideas will come to the surface. And so that is why that there has been that pushing down of the creative sense, that it isn't necessary for that to be, because they want people to sit within that lowness level. For when you are not creative, in some ways, you aren't really walking your life purpose. You aren't allowing for those new ideas and thoughts to come in so that you can fully fulfill why you came to come here. And you will say, well, there are some people that just wanted the experience of just very sedentary, the same thing, repetitiveness. And yes, that is true. But it is also about saying you can also bring in some of that belief structure of creativity. For if someone says, I want to be an artist, when a child tells you that, you say, well, that is great, but it's a great hobby, but it's not a great career. Why couldn't it be for them? Maybe they become an artist that also works within a museum and they're working on other things. Maybe they're an artist and they end up going in and they end up becoming a painter, but they are a painter of homes and murals and all of these other things. Or maybe they just say, I'm just going to find the success with painting of portraits for people, as it is something that may come back in the future and people may want. But don't put those parameters on what it is that they can do. For it is the other beings and humans around someone that say that's not possible, that's not the case. Let them try and expand. Let them allow for that energy, because if they truly follow their heart and what they want, and they're making decisions out of, yes, this is where I'm at, and I can feel that success, I can feel that energy, I'm in alignment with my life, all will come to each being, all will come to each person, and all will truly be set within what they need. Is that helpful for you?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
excellent.
What questions do you have for us on the creativity topic?
I feel like you totally nailed it with the creativity and the way that it infuses into our lives. As far as creativity, is there a connection here between speaking to your soul or speaking to your own higher spirit through creativity?
Yes, there is that connection of how you can speak through it. Because, yes, your higher self is very creative. Your soul is very creative, but it is the consciousness that sometimes put parameters on, well, you're not creative or you can't do this. Because you're told as a child, well, if you don't like to color, you're not creative. If you don't like to draw, you're not creative. And there's these classes that art classes that give children this ability to say, am I creative or am I not? And so someone that does not succeed in those will say, well, I'm not a creative person, but maybe their creativity comes in cooking. Maybe their creativity comes in music. Maybe it comes in their ability to, look at how they can plant something, and they see creativity in putting plants together and making beautiful flower pots or bouquets. That is all creative, but it is something that is not explored until potentially later in life, unless if they really have a calling to it and parents that really help push that in. And so it is about saying, how can I allow for this creativity to flow through? And how can I allow for that to flow through in a way that makes sense for each individual person or child? And so when you say, is the higher self involved? Yes, of course it is. Is that soul involved? Yes, of course. But it is about taking away those programs and beliefs to say, yes, I can. For a person that is in their 20s or 30s, that has done school, that has gotten a job that is very logical, that is very, one thing after the next, very routine, they may say, well, I'm not creative. And it's like, well, but how can you look at that? How can you try something creative and see if it calls to you? Do you go and you take a pottery class? Do you go and paint something? Do you maybe go and do something abstract or go help plant a community garden? Whatever it looks like to each individual being. But it is about just letting that part of the brain just kind of push a little bit. Did you think maybe I'm going to start journaling and maybe I'm going to start writing my thoughts down, and maybe that turns into more of a book or something that will help someone else? Do you tinker around with sounds? Do you say, how does this look? Or are you a carpenter? You say, oh, I don't build anything, I just follow the plan. But yet you also know when you see a plan, well, this isn't going to work, so I'm going to make this adjustment to make it better. That is a form of creativity. Do you say, you know what, I'm just going to free form build something later on because you built the skills to know how things are built, how things are put together. And then all of a sudden one day you notice, man, I'm making a lot of benches and chairs. That is creativity. Or you're building stuff without even the plans. You see the space and you hear your client say, I want a cabinet there. And you're like, okay. And without even getting plans, you're just putting it together. You've learned the skill set of how to utilize, how to use the tools, how to put the wood together, what it is, how structures work, how it needs to be supported, how it can be the strongest. And then you say, yes, this is what it is. That is still a form of creativity. And then you expand from there. So it is about understanding the basics. A painter cannot paint unless if they learn how to hold the paintbrush and mix colors to put them together. It is all about the stages that you go, but it is about letting that part of the mind expand and saying, yes, let's give you some time to see how all of this comes together. Let's give you some time to think about what could be. For that is when you allow for yourself, to your consciousness and your ego to kind of step back, that creative side can really step forward and go, this is what I want to explore. This is what I want to try. And it might be trying multiple things until you truly find what calls to you. and you say, wow, this is where I let my creativity shine. And it may be something that you don't show others. You may not become known for woodworking or known for your cooking, but for you, it is about that creative expression. And it is about just letting that part of you go, I want to create, because you can't create without creation. And without that creative energy and creation, nothing would ever be created. So if you think about it from that standpoint, that is where so much more comes in and where there's so much more connection to who and what has been. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, very much.
Okay, good. What other questions do you have for us?
I guess also along the same lines as creativity, using creative expression as a form of healing or a form of jumping into um, healing things in your life. How do people go about that?
So when you look at how you can have that sense of the healing sense through a creative expression, it is about understanding that with that creativity comes that creation of new ideas and thoughts. Because when you can come up with new ways to look at things or look at them, that is where the healing sense comes in. That is where you're able to heal so much more than what has been before. And that is where you have that sense of, yes, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going next, and this is how I'm going to get there. For as all of that flows in and as all of that connects in, it is about saying, letting the new ideas and thoughts flow through, which is what healing is. Healing is letting go of things that no longer serve us. It's about understanding maybe the why behind, but also saying that this is the path. And so it's about letting go of that old energy to bring in the new. And what is creativity? The exact same thing. It's letting go of the old beliefs and the old structures of what is there to let the new flow in. You can have a piece of blank paper, and that is the old construct. But as soon as you start drawing a picture on it, and as soon as you start using different colors and chalks and all of those things, or maybe it's just all done in pencil, that is the creation of new energy, of new life. And so it is about letting that flow through. And then the belief and the knowingness that this was a blank piece of paper before doesn't have as much intention, doesn't have as much strength down within because that isn't what it needed to be. And so that is how all of this flows together. That is how this truly connects in because there are so many things there that are needed and are necessary for these to flow in. And so that allows for this newness and this healing because the same way you can say when a baby comes, that can heal the grief that was experienced prior. For example, the parents may have experienced not being able to have a child or losing other child or babies before they were even born. And they say when that next child comes in, that form of creation, that creativity, that can heal what was there. The same thing can be said for when someone is feeling within that sadness mode, within that grief mode. If you say, draw me what is coming to you, put what you're feeling onto the piece of paper. As they're drawing, it's that releasement of energy and it's allowing that creativeness to go. It's allowing it to flow. Even if the person only draws stick figures and says, this is me, I am sad, but it is still putting it out there and letting that emotional flow so that the healing can come back in on the backside. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I love that image of the creation bringing in the healing and
Yes.
letting go of the blank page. I think that's beautiful.
What else can we answer for you today?
I think what's interesting, and you mentioned it before, was that idea of, I call it external rules or an inner critic, that I think so many people get shut down from their creativity and their creative expression, wherever that be in their life. Um, so, is there any way that people can really easily start addressing that inner critic or those external rules that were part of their conditioning as far as creativity and creative expression?
So it is about looking at why you have these beliefs and programs in front of you. And as we've mentioned before for people that have heard us, that yes, there are programs everyone needs. For instance, you do not put your hand on a hot stove, you it will burn. It's an important program for all humans to have. Otherwise, people would be walking around with burnt hands all the time because they would not know that that is something that needs to be done. And so those are important programs. But the programs of saying that you should not grieve or suck it up, you need to deal with it, or this is life, things happen. That is where it is not a healthy program because it is about saying you need to let go of these emotions. Now, this isn't to say we want people to wallow in sadness or wallow in things, but it's about saying that yes, you need to feel and you need to let them go and through creativity. So maybe for someone, the processing of something that they need to heal is done through writing. Maybe it's done through reading. Maybe it's done through just going outside and saying, I am going to cut the grass today and I'm going to cut it in a very weird pattern, but I don't care. That can be a form of creative expression that is also healing. It is about letting go of what no longer serves you. And it is about not letting someone else tell you how you need to heal because each being needs to do it in their own way. What works for you may not work for someone else. But it is about saying, do not allow those programs of this is life, things pass. The same way when you're a child and you have a pet that dies, you can say, well, this is life, this is a learning moment. Things get old and they die. And then they go, well, wait a minute. So when I'm just waiting to get old and then die, or what happens to my parents or my grandparents or those I'm closest to? And then they have the structure that, well, don't be sad because this is just what happens. Instead, it's saying, let's honor the time they were here and understand that they are transitioning back and that we will be with them again. And they fulfilled their time on this earth, but they are still with us. They are still around us, just in a different form that maybe we don't see, but allow for that to say and say, how can we honor why that what they did for us here? And maybe for that pet, you say, we want to put something under their favorite tree, or we want to have something in our home that reminds us of them, or we get a big picture of them blown up and we put it in our room. It is about honoring that sense and saying, how can we be creative with this? It is saying, how can we allow that to help shift the energy? Because otherwise you would say, well, the dog is dead. We're going to, send them to the vet. They're going to get cremated. We're never going to talk about them again. But those emotions start to build up. It's how can we honor that? And maybe you find that in a few years, you don't need that big picture of the dog on your wall. You say, you know what, I've got a few that are smaller that don't need, but that is that healing, but it's allowing for that to flow because creativity can allow for those emotions to come out in whatever way they need to, in whatever form they need to. And so that is more about how you can let this come through, how you can let this sense to you. And when all of that comes through and when all of that flows, that is when you will have that sense of, yes, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going, and this is truly what I need. Is that helpful for you?
Yeah, I'm loving it. Yeah. I do have a question
Of
as
course.
far as one of the what I find is when I'm creating, and I know a lot of artists do this too. I will start creating without any purpose really, or maybe I've set an intention, and then I lose time and space. It might go 4 hours. I didn't even know I was working that long. What is that space?
That space is that form of, it's almost a form of channeling. It's a form of allowing it to come through. It's a form of deep meditation where you're doing where you're going, but it's allowing it to come through. So truly, it's that connection with source that's coming in and just flowing out through you. It's truly letting your soul and your higher self and all of that energy and information come through you and that intention come through you while keeping the physical mind busy, keeping that ego and that consciousness busy. So, yes, that is just the true connection that flows in. The same way for her, she does it and she can say, yes, I'm doing this. No, I'm not. As we flow in through speaking or through her healings or through other things, you are doing it just in a form of letting it come through because the energy that you create within those pieces that you make becomes so much stronger because it is in its purest form without judgment, opinion, or the human mind getting involved. And so it is just learning to harness that ability and harness that energy to truly allow it to come through. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions you have for us today?
Um, for people who are interested in moving in creativity in that way and allowing themselves to be a channel for creativity, is there or for creative expression and for that source, right? Is there any things that people can do or work on to get to that place?
So the first one is just really working on that connection. How can you truly connect in? You can work on it through meditation. You can work on it through just really harnessing that and letting the physical mind step back. And so it is about kind of going into that place of where it is just there is nothing getting in the way. Because when you become a full and open channel, it is the removement of judgment, opinion, and beliefs that are put in front. It's just letting it flow through. And so when you can take out the human mind and the consciousness putting their own belief structures on something, that is when it comes through. And so, yes, there are many tools you can do to open it. But the first thing we would tell everyone is just learn how to just let the human mind and consciousness step back and the ego step back to just allow that flow of information, to allow that flow of energy. When you can begin to feel the flow of energy coming in, and when you can feel yourself rooted into the ground and that flow coming in and just allowing something to happen, that is when it will truly be what you need. So start off with drawing, start off with automatic writing, start off which is not questioning what your hand is doing, but letting it come through. Or when you're putting together a bouquet of flowers, don't say, well, maybe this needs to go over here because this red rose really should be on this side because I already have one on this side. Let it become what it needs to be. Don't control it. Don't try to make it into something it's not. Because when you control something and try to make it into something that you want it to be, that is not when you're allowing it to become what it wants to be. And maybe you'll notice that when you're done, you're like, I would have separated all of the red roses, but I love all of them on this one side because now I notice that I have the deep red, but then it flows colorfully down into the lighter pinks and pastels. So I've created this color menage of colors that really calls to me, that is really gorgeous. But if you didn't allow it to become, if you didn't let your hands just put things where they needed to be, you would then look back and say, wow, I love it even more than what I did before. So try to do things without the human mind in the way. If you're, say, you're going to color or you're going to draw, put all of the colored pencils in front of you and close your eyes and just say, become what you need to become. And just at random pick up pencils and just put color onto paper. And you may say, well, it's just all of this scratches and scribbling. But if you put an intention to it, as you said, you might open your eyes and go, wow, it looks a little odd. It looks a little different, but for some reason I like it. Or you may say, I just don't know. And you put it aside because your human mind gets involved and says, well, that's really ugly. But you notice that you put it on your desk or on your table and you won't throw it away. You keep coming back to it going, I don't know why but I have the calling to this, but it is just ugly. But that is because it is giving you that energy. You allowed that energy to come through. And so you kind of have it there always just in out of the corner of your eye. You see it every now and then it gets piled under papers, and then you come across it later on, but you just don't feel that. You just can't throw it out yet. And then all of a sudden you notice that as you do more of this, you're like, man, this is shifting into something else. But it's that energy of what you needed there to come through. So try those different things just to allow it to flow, allow it to come in. Because when you're able to do that, when you're able to have that without the human mind being caught up in what's going on, you will come to find that there is so much more there than what you even realized. Is that helpful for you?
Oh yeah. Just now I want to go make a bouquet of flowers. I just want to
Yes,
play with the colors.
just see what happens. Close your eyes and see what happens. The easiest way to get the human mind out of the way is to close your eyes. Now do it in something that is safe. Don't decide, oh, I'm going to go hang pictures and I'm not going to look and then I'm going to hit my finger with a hammer. So do it within reason, but just allow for yourself to just let those things flow through you. Anything else you have for us today before we go?
I think, well, I run soul art journeys, and part of this, exactly what you're explaining, is this creative expression process. And after that, you go into a stage of insight and spirit action. So I guess my question is, once you've kind of channeled or let go and moved your energy into this piece and this creation, what's the best way to work towards finding insights in it that can help us in our lives?
As you continue the process of opening up that connection, you will find that insights and the messages will come through. Maybe you notice that when you were drawing something with your colored pencils, you're looking at it, you're going, why, there seems to be a tree in here. There's a bunch of green, there's some brown, there's blue, there's green. And even though it might be very abstract, you're saying there's a tree. What does a tree mean to you? Well, a tree to me means grounding, it means rooting down, it means stability. And you say, oh, that's what I'm looking for in life. I need to be more stable. I need to be more rooted in with where I'm at. I'm living this life of wandering and not committing to people and having all of these acquaintances, but I really haven't rooted down within a community of where I am, or even with my family or my friends. So then you get the message out of that. So slowly over time, the messages will come through. The more you can learn to just be open to what comes in and allow that, then you will find that it flows through. And you may even notice that you pick up the pencils and you're just like, with your eyes open, you're saying, well, I just want to draw. And then your eyes are open and you're seeing what you're drawing, but you're not consciously thinking about what you're picking up. And you're going, oh, wow, as I'm drawing, as this is coming through, I'm seeing a skyline. I am seeing maybe there's a box there. And you're going, wow, there's a box. Okay, what is the box? And then you're hearing this story of that. This box is a gift to you, is a gift to you with a message for you. And so even though you're not drawing what is in the box, you're drawing the outside of the box, you're letting it flow through as to that this is a gift for you to understand that there is a key inside, and it is a key that will open a door, but you need to take the key to open the door. And then you think, well, how does this relate in daily life? And then you realize that someone had said, hey, offers you a job. And you go, huh, I didn't even think I wanted a job or that job. But maybe that's the key to open up the next chapter. You take that job, which is the key, and then you realize within a few months that you're going down a completely different path within that company or position, and you absolutely love it because you started in, and they're like, wow, she'd be excellent for this position. And then you realize you're doing what you've always wanted to do, what you've always loved to do. But taking that job was the key to something else. So it's all about looking at what the signs are, what they mean, and just an allowance for all of that to flow through. Is that helpful for you?
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Anything else you have for us today?
Um, no, I mean, we've covered so much,
Yes.
and yeah, it's been amazing.
Giving you much to think about. So take some time to let it absorb. And with that, we wish you fun. Wow, Jocelyn, that was a lot that came through.
There
It was
was a lot.
interesting for me as well. I was like, wow, it's a different way to think about things.
Are you gonna be getting flowers too? Because I'm gonna go down and get flowers. I was
I
so
know.
inspired by that.
I have all of these crates of flowers actually outside that I need to put into pots. And I'm like, oh, okay. I think I'm just going to let it come through. So, yes, I already actually have them. I just haven't planted them yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any, like, what did that answer your questions? Did that really call to you? Find it helpful within?
Yeah, I think a lot of it really solidified a lot of how I feel,
Mhm.
but just in a different language.
Right.
And just that idea of creation, we were talking creation, and
Yeah.
that idea of the blank page, and even with the grief,
Yeah.
like the idea that it's not memorial in a sense, but it is, right? It's like
Mhm.
this idea of putting your energy and creating into something new.
Right.
I loved it. I thought it was just said in a different way for me that totally hits home.
Yeah. That's usually what they do. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's about getting those belief structures out of the way.
Oh,
We're all,
yeah.
and it's about saying, how can we still be successful and still be part of the communities we're a part of, but also let those expressions flow, especially from that grief standpoint. People say they get frozen in grief, and it's like, okay, that's an energy you need to push through, but you also
Mhm.
don't want the opposite of they never grieved at all and they just buried it down deep inside. And then you're like, man, I wonder why this person is having all of these heart issues or is having all of this grief come up. It's like because they need to let it out. You need to let the energy flow, but in a healthy way. So I love that whole, yeah, creatively, you can honor that person that passed or honor what you need, but also
Mhm.
move it forward.
Yeah, like even honoring your own feelings, your own loss, right?
Yeah.
Honoring all of that. And at the same time, honoring the space in your life that was created
Yeah.
and filling that with new
Yeah.
creations. I feel it was really beautiful imagery in all of that. And I just felt like just even talking about the soul art I've done and moving into that insight piece, I feel that's so right on because even you even get insights not just from and the signs not just from your art, but from everything that happens, like the call that's made
Mhm.
while or the voicemail that was left or the door and the wind that came in through all of that it are
Yeah.
signs within that time. It's not just about what you're drawing or what you're creating. So it's super cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, a very cool conversation. I really appreciate that topic today. I was like, "Oh, I love that one." So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it's like it's so true too. So many people were told, and it was so at one point they were saying about, being in a class, and I always say to people when I talk to them, I'm like, kindergartners and young kids are full of creativity, but they're taught how to make handprint turkeys
Mhm.
and, cotton ball snowmen.
Yeah.
And it's like it starts that young,
Yeah.
and it's like we already build these walls around whether we can do it or not.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it was very cool too. It would just even that to be focused for a minute, like brought in, because that's something I say all the time.
I know. Right, and we're told and we're taught and programmed as young kids that that's creativity. Handprint turkeys and gluing cotton balls is creative. But it's
Yeah.
like, let's think about of all of the other, creative, like imagination, play, all of those things are very
Yeah.
creative, and we just tell kids, well, you're too old to play with Legos. It's like,
Yeah.
why? You're not too old for that. So,
Yeah. Or
yeah.
like I worked for a while with kindergartners way back when, and they would make their, cotton ball snowman, but they'd
Yeah.
have eyes on the paper and then they'd the nose like, all the way up
Yeah.
across the room somewhere. And they would look, and then someone would come and fix it for them. And I was like, don't fix that. What are you talking
Oh.
about? That was awesome.
Yeah, I know, that's how they see it. Let them do what they want, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is one of these beautiful open things, the creative expression. And it's so true. I love that it was said, gardening, cooking. My favorite thing I think that was said about creativity in that vein was taking rocks and just
Right,
placing them in a way, right?
right.
Is being creative. And
Yeah.
I mean, and it made me think of like the big stone structures.
Yeah,
But like that is, I watch my daughter do it all the time. She
mhm,
like takes rocks from one place, puts them somewhere else, that
right.
that idea that it is we're all creative all the time. We're just not labeling it that or we're putting it in another category. So
Yes.
it was very cool for the expansion of like what it is to be creative. And
Mhm.
then the really simple stuff, like they were talking about journaling, just
Yeah.
sketching with your eyes closed. It's something I do a lot. I call it energy sketching, but like just picking random color.
Well, and seeing what it becomes, because that's, w creativity doesn't have to be that you're, Picasso,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
all about what calls to you. So,
Yeah. It's like a process, not a product, right? Like some people take it to
yes.
the point of product. And oftentimes people who get creative take it to a product, they get stuck because then they're asked to be creating something in this vein for this many times, right? And their
Right.
creativity wants to move.
Yes.
So I think that happens too on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
but just it's like the process of getting lost. And even that space we were talking about, when like I will lose hours doing something, like
Yeah.
just getting lost in something.
Right.
And how beautiful that process is. And I may not come out with anything from that 3 or 4 hours, but it was like an experience
Yeah.
and a moment of
Right.
working with my soul or my higher self or source, whoever, you're working with in that way.
Right.
It was very cool.
Yeah, yeah, and you'll find that that will grow over time because I know they touch somewhat on that, that grows into because that's a form of channeling, which I'm a believer that every person can channel. We just might all do it in a different way. And so, that just allows for that expansiveness to continue, and that could just be the opening to what you need to really let, information or energy or whatever it is flow through you to, honor who you are and who you came here to be.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because like they talked about meditation as being like an introduction to that, just getting to know yourself
Yeah.
and getting that head out of the way. Um, but also like it's interesting too because for the longest time I couldn't meditate at all. Like I was like, I can't sit still. Then
Mhm.
my parents died and I learned how to sit still. But I always did like moving meditations. So to know like if you're like a qigong person or like you're, a dancer or you're even yoga, like any like that is all going in to yourself and finding that relationship with yourself, getting lost in that.
Yeah, that is so very true. Yeah, there's so many ways. We just have to embrace it. So that's for sure. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I know we could keep talking for
It
hours.
was so good.
Yeah, but I just love the topic. But for people that want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I have my website is jocelynbates.net.
Okay.
And I'm on Instagram, Soul Sessions by Jocelyn. And I'm on Insight Timer if anyone wants to do yoga nidras for free under my
Okay.
name.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm sure people will reach out and then I'll have all of your contact information in the description. So, do definitely reach out because this has been a really cool conversation. I hope we can continue it as well with a later
Yeah.
date. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. So
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for being on. Thank you, everyone, for jumping on as well. And with that, have a wonderful day.